Hello, and thank you for viewing this presentation. My name is Rocky Rhodes. In this presentation, we will examine the revolutionary girl Utena and adolescence of Utena's story arcs from a contemporary lens, conscious of understanding gender beyond the two binaries. As these stories continue to be relevant in pop culture, it is important to consider their potential interpretations through this lens without limiting our understanding of them to the social and cultural interpretations of the time in which they were originally released. As culture continues to evolve and transform, so does the meaning and impact of these stories. To begin, let us imagine a prince. Traditionally, this character would be brave, noble, and heroic. As these words may indicate, the prince is the driving force, the one who fights for his princess, saves her, and then marries her. Charming, brave, and handsome, the prince is an attractive man. Yes, he is a man. This character does not come without an assigned gender, so wouldn't it be revolutionary if the prince were to instead be a woman? This is the idea explored in Revolutionary Girl Utena and the Adolescence of Utena manga series. Both stories follow a pink-haired young woman who refuses to fit the expectations of her assigned gender role, in both presentation and in her actions. This unique young lady is Utena, and she wants to be a prince. For her to be a prince, it would be certainly distinctive, but is it revolutionary? How much would her role change the story if all the other characters were cast the same? If she were to step into the role of prince and completely satisfy all expectations, would much change in the plot or message? Or would it be more revolutionary if the prince and princess were to instead abandon their roles altogether? Revolutionary Girl Utena and the Adolescence of Utena explore both alternatives. In both stories, Utena is our vehicle to understanding what it would mean to subvert gender norms by either claiming the expression of the opposite gender or rejecting both binaries completely. And while both may feel liberating, the audience will learn that only the rejection of a binary system can create real change, allowing more free self-expression and life without binary, systemic roles and expectations. The rebellious nature of Revolutionary Girl Utena is overshadowed by the truly revolutionary message of the Adolescence of Utena, that being that heteronormativity creates oppressive and damaging expectations for both genders, and it is necessary to reject the expectations of both gender binaries to dismantle this detrimental culture. Revolutionary Girl Utena follows Utena on her journey to become a prince. Inspired by a strange encounter with the mysterious man who saved her years earlier, she is both in love with him and aspires to emulate the same heroic persona as her prince. She becomes a student at a prestigious boarding school, determined to become a prince and reconcile her past. But her path to becoming a prince is periodically interrupted by her desire to find her own prince. In the Adolescence of Utena, Utena's journey is not interrupted by her aspirations to find her prince, but the encounter she has with her ex-lover. Like the dual role of her hero in the first story, her ex serves as both heroic inspiration and to create romantic tension. It is in spite of this ex-lover that she aspires to become her own prince. However similar, the prevailing message in these two stories differ greatly. In both, Utena duels against the current master of the Rose Bride. While Utena's intent was only to protect her fellow student, this action plunges her into a long series of duels as part of a larger plan laid down by a mysterious world's end. She will struggle to remain the victor and understand her role amongst the competitive members of the student council and her partner, the Rose Bride, Anthe. The identifying and expression of one's gender is performance. That is, gender is a label that one identifies by and performs through associated gender roles. This is separate from sex. Sex is used in reference to one's biology or sexual anatomy. For cultures with a gender binary, there are two recognized genders, each meant to be associated with the two sexes, and with them, assigned gender roles. In these cultures, sex, gender, and gender roles are all intended to link, as determined by the social structure and maintained through teaching each generation to fulfill these roles as indicated. It is in these cultures that social expectations like heteronormativity exist, as they are based within social expectations for male and female identities. Heteronormativity being the idea that heterosexuality is the default or natural sexuality. In both Utena stories, the main characters competing for the Rose Bride are depicted as very androgynous, an act already challenging gender expectations. The boys and girls competing for the Rose Bride all present features and behaviors that resemble those of the opposite gender. The men are conventionally attractive in many ways, being very tall with lean stature and long angular faces. At the same time, they are very feminized, having large eyes with exaggerated lashes, delicately articulated hands and gestures, and full, long, flowing hair. For the ladies, their more androgynous features are in their attire and behavior. Their clothes are masculine and their behavior is aggressive and competitive to rival the men. Both stories start with Utena strolling across campus as she is ogled by the other girls at school. These girls are depicted as being love-struck, gawking with hearts floating above them, their faces blushing, and making comments of admiration and attraction to her. But her presentation is very different in the two stories. In the first, Utena is recognized as a girl. In the second, Utena is thought to be a boy. It is the student's attraction to both gender expressions that makes it clear that the young women in these stories are most attracted to people who exist in a space outside the male and female binary. The Utena of Revolutionary Girl Utena is much more female-coded than that of Adolescence of Utena. Contrasting with the other young women on campus, Utena's appearance is very butch, characterized as being deliberately masculine. But she is still proudly presenting herself as a young woman. Her comfort in her identity is so linked to this presentation of gender that she goes so far as to use feminine self-expression as a form of self-punishment. After losing the Rose Bride, she decides to fall back onto the tradition of female students on campus, wearing a uniform consisting of a sailor blouse and a short pleated skirt. For Utena, wearing girls' clothes reinforces social pressures to perform her role as a feminine young woman and worsens her depression. She doesn't snap out of this depressive state until she is reminded of her goals and returns to her previous semi-masculine attire, reclaiming her previous identity. In the Adolescence of Utena, Utena's identity more closely aligns with someone who is non-binary. Where she did not link gender with the title of prince in Revolutionary Girl Utena, she seems to do so in this story. To become her own prince, she reinvented herself, including a new masculine look, wearing short hair and a boy's uniform. To fill the role of prince, she attempts to become masculine, therefore recognizing that the role is masculine in definition. At the same time, she does not stop identifying as a girl. She responds to both she, her, and he, him pronouns, without correcting or feeling misgendered by either. She is male and female, while also being neither at the same time. In both narratives, Utena's sexuality is as ambiguous as her gender. In both, Utena's first love interests are male. Even despite apparent rivalry and incompatibility, thinking of men as her natural default in romantic situations is the result of a heteronormative society. Again, this is a society that is based on the attitude that heterosexuality is the only normal or natural expression of sexuality. Much like the princess usually does in traditional fairy tales, the men she is attracted to disrupt her journey. Throughout her stories, men are the ones who create the obstacles standing between her and her goals. In Revolutionary Girl, it is a man who distracts her from seeing things clearly, making herself vulnerable to his deceptive plot. It is also this man who strips her of her power, attempting to put her in positions of subservience to him. This moment asserts the disruptive nature of her heterosexual partners, but also the toxicity of submitting to a heterosexual culture. In this story, Utena's attempt to reclaim her own power ultimately results in conformity. While she claims a more masculine role and expression, Utena still fills one of the two binary roles. Living within the confines of the heteronormative culture on campus, she is assigned the gender roles of a man in her relationship with Anthe and is expected to be the more dominant of the two. They are both women, but each is expected to pick one of the two heteronormative binary gender roles within the relationship between the two of them. The dynamics in heterosexual relationships and homosexual relationships mirror each other when both conform to the roles established by heteronormative expectations. The way men treat their female partners throughout the story creates an unhealthy power dynamic. Every man who wins the Rose Bride treats her as property. The man to first lose Anthe to Utena is physically abusive. The next man to take her as his bride, while not physically abusive, still ignores her emotional needs. And, just as his predecessor did, he repeatedly assures Utena that Anthe feels nothing but content for her situation, as this is her role as the Rose Bride. The men conflate societal expectations with absolute truth. They assume that Anthe feels joy in her role. The imbalance in these relationships establishes a dangerous norm. Throughout Revolutionary Girl Utena, Utena tries to teach Anthe her right to being treated with respect and dignity. But Anthe has internalized retrogressive gender expectations and struggles to let go of them throughout the entire story. For Anthe, the things Utena tries to teach her about dignity and self-respect are hard for her to accept. Instead of accepting them as truths, she acts them out in obligation to Utena, just as she did with serving her male partner's demands. No matter the purity of Utena's intentions and her respect for Anthe, the impact of their social structure continues to affect their relationship. Despite being two women, their cultural expectations of having a dominant and subservient role still permeate the relationship. Similar to Revolutionary Girl Utena, the Adolescence of Utena again asserts the toxicity of heteronormativity's impact on culture. For the members of the student council, the school becomes a place of entrapment, where the characters all live out their lives in repetitive cycles, so long as there is a prince and a Rose Bride role to be filled. The prince and rose-bride rules are at the top of the social structure, leading the rest of culture through example. With these rules being set as the standard, the rest of their social structure will follow suit to uphold the system with other relationships mirroring this imbalance. When the toxic environment becomes suffocating, Utena's only chance at survival is to reject her role as either prince or bride. Playing out this metaphor, World's End attempts to drown Utena. When Utena's ex appears in an attempt to save Utena, he instructs her to let go of his memory. So long as she holds on to him, they will remain entrapped in this place, as the Rose Bride and the Prince have been. Utena must let go of her role in order to reset the whole social structure. And when she does so, she and Anthe are freed from damaging expectations and social structures. Utena's original desire to become a prince is the motivator within both of Utena's separate journeys. What she wants is to be brave, noble, and heroic, but in a culture that defines those things as masculine, she must also choose to take on that persona to become her own prince, which she accepts and wears comfortably. Her acceptance of the prince role only becomes complicated by the expectation that the student council holds for her in her relationship with Anthe. The prince archetype is defined by power and strength. His power is emphasized by his status, his claim to riches exclusive to his status, command over his people, his assertion of strength over his enemies, and his claim to his bride. Therefore, the prince archetype is actually defined by aggression and domination. This is not comfortable for Utena. She cannot allow Anthe, another woman, to be subjected to such cruel treatment. Instead, Utena wants to share the same empowerment she found within herself with other young women. To submit her bride to the same treatment she may be subjected to as a feminine-presenting woman is cruel and continues the cycle of violence. It also inflicts self-harm. To separate herself from the community of women and hold on to her title as prince, she would have to deny herself expression of any feminine-coded behaviors or traits. Just as men are, she would too become susceptible to the self-loathing and hate expressed by men attempting to fit a very strict role to preserve their own masculine identity. She too would feel the impact of harmful masculine gender expectations. The negative connotations associated with masculinity are the effect of attempting to uphold negative masculine roles, necessitated by a binary system that states that men are of the dominant gender. Just as Utena is subject to the pressures felt by toxic masculinity, you could say Anthe feels the same kind of pressure in her role as the feminine partner. While Utena feels the pressure to be the dominant partner, Anthe is forced to be submissive. She is forced to live without the expectation that her feelings will be considered or she will be treated with dignity. Both partners are hurt by this social structure, hurting each other to maintain their identity, and in turn hurting themselves. In addressing these themes, the adolescence of Utena establishes itself as the truly revolutionary story. To become the prince and hold the power to change the world is the intent and achievement for Utena in both stories, but it is in the adolescence of Utena that she truly uses that power to its full potential. By rejecting their roles, the two young women dismantle the system that holds them to expectations that are uncomfortable, unjust, and incompatible for them. Choosing her own happiness, it feels as if Anthe understands the lessons Utena tried to teach her in Revolutionary Girl Utena. She chooses to reject the roles placed upon her as a female-identifying person, demanding that she be treated with dignity. She also learned to no longer conflate love and violence, and she will not accept it. Free from this unhealthy social structure, the two women are able to express their gender identity freely, therefore living their lives without any social expectations to define their own self-expression or treatment of each other. Neither girl is the submissive person. Neither person's lifestyle is defined by her partner's romantic preferences. Both of them make sacrifices to save each other. Both are saved by each other. The two young women are of equal standing, both vulnerable and strong. To conclude this presentation, I want to take a moment to recognize that this analysis is of course greatly impacted by the current cultural climate. In the 1990s, we were not having conversations about gender in the way we are now, neither in Japan nor in the West. I do, however, feel that these stories lend themselves to this sort of reading or interpretation for all of the reasons I discussed in this presentation. I do believe that these truly revolutionary attempts to talk about gender expectations, and sexuality have created a space to explore these themes, as we have done and continue to do as we further progress into the future and continue these conversations. As our conversations about gender take on more ideas, stories like these, and I believe especially these, will continue to be a welcome space to revisit and discuss these themes.